Hi Blues, welcome back to Blue Moon Rising TV, and you're here, we know why you're here, because we're going to talk about the next chapter in the Pep Revolution, the next signing, the second signing of the summer. We've signed Nolito, which is great. We've got Gundogan in the bag, we've got Nolito now, and it's only the start of July.
He's just started today as well, Pep. It's his first day and he's already got 2 players to start his reimagining of Manchester City already, so it's a pretty positive start as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and it's funny, just as a side point before we get into it, there's rumours abound that Sterling was sanctioned by Guardiola as well. So it's almost like this has been so long and so well prepared. It shouldn't be any surprise that we're getting our deals done nice and early because Pep knows what he wants. So that's great. And we really feel like we're in safe hands when he's steering the Manchester City ship. So let's get into it. The nitty gritty. There's lots to talk about, lots of discussion points. The first one is the fee. Now, 14 million, just under, 4-year deal. What do we make of that? That's peanuts these days, isn't it?
That's a bargain. You've got to consider he's Spain's first choice left winger, one of the most creative players in La Liga. He scores goals, he works hard, he's intelligent, he's in theory in his prime given his age. 13.8 million for an international winger who's highly sought after. Yeah, that's phenomenal. We look at the fact that Watford this week have rejected bids worth around 65 million for Troy Deeney and Igalo in total.
The world's gone mad.
Yeah, it's crazy. That's crazy money. And then we've got like Gundogan and Nolito in for around 35 million total. That was about the same price as Benteke or your Fellaini's, or Sadio Mane went for just a little bit less than that to Liverpool. This is a hugely inflated market in football at the moment. And a player like him that could come in and there's no risk attached given the fee, that's spare change for the Sheikh. That's an absolute bargain. And I'm not concerned in the slightest about the price.
We activated his release clause by all accounts, and it looks like there was another team that was in. We'll come on to that in a minute. But yeah,
they're quite good, that team.
You probably heard of them, and it wasn't the B team. But yeah, we're the ones who activated the release clause. So then it was a matter of who did he want to go with. He chose us. So yeah, 14 million. It's a snip. I don't think we can argue with that.
It's win-win, isn't it? Really.
The one issue that people are saying that maybe why we've got him a little bit on the cheap is because of his age. So he's an attacking player. He's a winger. You associate that with speed, and I guess people are a bit worried that maybe at 29, 30. A winger is not going to be as effective. What do you make of that?
I don't want to be all happy clappy and say like there's no problems or whatever, but you can see the reasoning behind it. Yeah, he isn't young. Let's be honest. He's not, just a spring chicken. He isn't going to get. He isn't going to be with us for 5, 6, 7 years. He isn't a massive part of our future. But, I mean, I can understand the reason behind this signing. It's one of those kind of short-term games for very little loss kind of situations. Even these days in modern football, and we're seeing a lot because of developments in sports science and whatever, players are just fitter. I'm 30 and I feel great, personally.
You look it too.
Yeah, thank you, man. I feel healthy, and now imagine an athlete. Like, he's 20.
This is the most ridiculous justification.
Exactly. I'm 30, so therefore Nolito's fine. Done. Drop mic. But, no, you look at Vardy's peak around a similar age, and then I've lost my trail of thought entirely because of my terrible joke. But yeah, he's only 29 still. You consider the fact.
I'll pick this up. Basically, I think a point that you've mentioned before in the past is that we want to bring in our youth. Right?
Yes.
And so if we start signing players who are all 23, 24, 25, then how are these players going to get into the squad? Because
pathways,
we're going to have So we've got a solution here that maybe gives us 2 or 3 years of a player, 4 years. Well, it's a 4-year contract at his prime. And then we bleed the other players in, right? Yeah,
look at the likes of Tevez, still banging them in for Juve. His game's based around energy and dynamism and intelligence. So we've got Fernandinho, aged 28. That was hardly a young player, but he's done pretty much okay for us. David Silva is still a magnificent player in his 30. If we were signing him, no one would be questioning that, given his age. I think the questions come from maybe not knowing who he is. And I think that's understandable. He's a relatively low-profile player compared to some. But his age these days, in the current era, the current kind of generation of players being really healthy, really fit, not an injury-prone player, I think he'll be fine in 29. I can see that making a lot of sense, and I'm not worried because then the likes of Brahim Diaz, Brandon Barker, all these young players, by the time they kind of develop their way into the first team, hopefully, Nolito will be 31, 32, and he'll be fading off, and you won't have someone like a 25-year-old winger, and they're sat there thinking, well, what am I meant to do?
Yeah.
It's a decent age.
When you put it like that, it really does sound like it has all the logic in the world.
Pathways.
Yeah, exactly. And it's somebody who knows the Guardiola way, as we'll get to, so it just seems to make sense. Okay, that you've reassured me now. On to the next point, which is, we know he's a winger. How does he play? What's his style? What's he going to bring to Manchester City? What can we expect from him?
I've watched bits of him online, as we all have. We saw him play for Spain. To mixed results, I think it's been fair. The first game, excellent. Last couple of games, not so good. But then the team struggled.
Yeah, I think Spain in general, I mean, I love watching Spain in general, but I think it's just a team that's it's had that style of play, and they've tried to keep playing it. They've not changed anything. And they've just run out of steam. Yeah. So I don't think it was necessarily him, but But
we did see the best of him in that first game, and what he'll bring to us is a lot of energy, and he's really one of those kind of forwards. He bustles forward, a bit like Tevez in that way, in terms of just all about consistent work rate and ethic, and constantly trying, not the same level as Tevez because he's a phenomenal player, but he doesn't have to be. He has to be useful. Yeah. But he'll kind of drive forward. He cuts in. He dribbles a lot, right forward. He scores. He creates a lot of chances. I'm talking a lot of chances. We'll go into the stats in a bit, but he scores a lot of goals, creates a lot of chances, and I think it's because he's so consistent and really persistent too. He really runs at defences constantly. He stretches the play, and he's a natural winger, an out-and-out winger, and one that scores goals. So Pep does value that. Pep, I seen Gillian Ballag quote today saying how Nolito's been born because he fits how Pep wants to play. Bought, sorry. Born into
wow, that would be a long-term plan.
Yeah.
Pep Guardiola is creating footballers.
He's signing players to fit a certain kind of ethos and style for Man City, and he's aware that you need certain cogs to fit into the machine, and Nolito fits that bill. So that's why they signed him. It's not because he thinks he'll be useful. I'm sure he will be that, but it's bigger than that. He thinks he'll be part of Man City's new
starting to
style.
Make me think a little bit of Pedro in the same position. Not a player that you would say was probably the best, world class, I would say.
Super effective,
but effective in the right system.
Well, I think it's fair to say as well, Pedro hasn't been anywhere near as effective at Chelsea. Still a great player, but Pedro was utilised perfectly by a manager who understood his game and moulded him into a certain shape. And he probably looks at Nolito and think, well, he can do a very similar role for my team. And it's about the whole greater than the sum of the parts, And that's what he's aware of, Pep, because he's a vastly more intelligent person than basically all of us.
Just one final point I would like to say on his position. I think City, we've been suffering. You said about stretching the play. We've been so narrow for so long. Yeah. Even we bought a winger in Sterling, and it seems like he was instructed or he had it beaten out of him to stretch the play, and he just sort of would bring the ball in, and it was the same on the right. Navas, all he would do was get over to the wing and then pass it back. Yeah. So a player who can create gaps, because we're going to have teams just putting 10, 11 men behind the ball. Yeah. And so we really need that width to bring out the play.
It's all about how he plays and sets up, isn't it?
Yeah, give space to Silva, Aguero, Gundogan, De Bruyne. It's exciting.
Not a bad list.
Not a bad list at all. Okay, so next, just very quickly, who is he going to be competing with then? Because he's been given the number 9 shirt, which traditionally is a striker's number. Can we expect him to, obviously Sterling is the player who's most of a threat, right?
I would say so. I think Sterling actually, I think he'll see him move over to the right every now and then. And he did do a lot of that at Liverpool. He actually ran us ragged a few times on the right wing. Yeah. And that's where he actually started to break through into the England team, initially on the right. I think he'll rotate players. Sterling will get a chance. Sterling was sanctioned by Guardiola. That's a fact, 100% a fact, because they knew he was coming a year ago. But I think he'll give the chance for everyone to move around. You might even have Nolito cutting in or playing as an out-and-out winger every now on the right. I can't see it, but he could do that. It's Guardiola. He does what he wants, really. Sterling could play anywhere. Silva has traditionally kind of drifted around the wings when he's played for City, and given De Bruyne has made a name for himself as a number 10, it might be that Silva finds himself stuck out wide too. So he'll be in competition with basically all our forwards. Yeah. You never know. He could even put Aguero out wide. That's how Aguero made his name at Atletico as well. Yeah. He'll do some stuff we can't imagine.
Thierry Henry famously played out almost as he was a left-sided striker, borderline winger coming in.
There'll be a lot of stuff we won't predict under Pep, and Nolito will offer versatility and options. And yes, he'll be in direct competition with Sterling mainly, but I think everyone will be looking over the shoulder a little bit, given how effective he could be. Yeah,
it's going to be a very fluid attack, isn't it? Yeah. Which is what we're excited for. Okay, let's move on now to his stats then. So he is. There's been some stats flying around, and they are impressive to say the least.
Straight away goals. He brings goals, almost guaranteed goals. 39 goals in 100 games. That's almost a striker's record. That's over one every 3 games. Not that far under one every 2. Yeah. That's impressive for any winger, and that comes from, once again, his persistence, his willingness to shoot. And that's one thing that's noticeable in the Spanish team. Actually, he was the one player taking shots always, and we've always been critical of our players overpassing it and trying to walk the ball into the net. But it's nice to have a player, and Pedro did the same thing at Barcelona actually. Nice to have a player who's willing to score and willing to actually just have an effort, because it does help and it makes defence is nervous if a player's going to shoot from anywhere. But yeah, last season he had 29 games in the Liga. I think 60 chances created, so he creates an average 2 chances a game. Well, more than that technically. 12 goals, 7 assists, so involved in 19 goals in 29 games. The calendar year before that, in 2015, he created 101 chances, and that's more than anyone else in Spain. That was more than Neymar, Messi, Ronaldo, James, Cruz, all these players you can name.
And this is playing in a team. This is playing
Celta Vigo, this is like playing for, I don't know, like a Stoke level team in the Premier League.
Competent, but not exactly the most creative.
He did it against Barca and Real too. There's videos of him online where he plays well and scores against those teams because of his direct nature, and it's easy to overlook that. But they're good stats, they're really good stats, and you'd fancy him to score a few goals next season for us based on everything. Yeah,
I mean, it's funny when you start to say he's got more than this than Messi, people say you're having a laugh. Yeah. But all you can do is use the numbers that are in front of you, and it's a fact.
Stats don't lie.
He's been up there. So, yeah, fantastic. The numbers look tasty so far. Okay, so now let's talk a bit more about Guardiola and the backstory here. So, Guardiola gave him his debut for Barcelona originally. So, this is a player who played for him in 2010, 2011, and then moved away, and Guardiola moved away, and now they're coming back together. So there's a backstory there.
Yeah, he was initially signed by Barcelona B when he was about 21, 22, so he really is a late bloomer. But they signed him for the B team.
Definitely going to love him then. If he's coming through the B team as well, he's going to see him as his little...
It's hipster kudos there, isn't he? Massively. But they signed him for the B team initially, and then he gave him his debut for Barcelona the following year, and that was in 2010. Then he moved on as well to Benfica, had a loan at Granada, and then Luis Enrique signed him for Celta Vigo. And what's interesting about that is, who was the man trying to sign him for Barcelona this summer? Luis Enrique.
Well, so you've got the Guardian. It's not just hearsay. Well, not just plucked out of thin air.
That's true.
The Guardian are reporting that Barcelona wanted to sign him, and he has decided to join us. So if Barcelona are after a player and he comes to us, admittedly, you're not going to see him start every week at Barcelona, but that's probably one of the reasons that attracted him more here. But when we're competing with teams like that and he comes to us, it's a good sign, isn't it?
Well, you've got 2 of Barcelona's most successful managers ever there, Guardiola, who laid the foundations for the success, and then Luis Enrique, who's had a phenomenal time there so far as well, won countless trophies, and they both wanted to sign back a player they'd worked with beforehand. That says it all about his attitude towards the game, his professionalism, what he can bring. They know him inside out. They trust him, and he's always been a kind of a tradition of managers over the years, bringing players that they trust along with them. It happens to everyone. Guardiola does it. Harry Redknapp famously did it all the time with Kranjgar and all those players. But there's a reason they do that. It's because they know these players inside out. Yeah. And the likes of Enrique and Guardiola, both obviously excellent top-class managers, trust a player that much, then you have to trust them. They know a lot about football. And I find it fascinating that there is this link to them and that they were so willing to go back to this player despite him playing at a lesser club, so to speak. I think it speaks volumes about his reputation in certain circles. And I think it's a very, very interesting, very pertinent point.
Yeah. Okay, so I think all of our doubts really should be put to rest more or less there. And ultimately, forget what we say, Guardiola wants to sign him. And if Guardiola wants somebody, well, I'm with him.
Look, do you know what? It may not work out. It's possible they might not. But 13.8 million, there's no real damage there. It's one of those ones where you just trust in Pep, because you don't sign a manager like Pep Guardiola, a 6-year project in the making to get him to come to the club, and then just immediately go, oh, hang on, you want him? Nah. You don't do that. You trust a manager like that because that's how he's made his reputation. There's some signings he'll make will flop. But in this sense, I feel confident and I trust the idea of what he wants at this club and how he wants to develop City going forward. I think it makes a lot of sense, and I think we should just trust him and kind of go with the flow in this one. And I think we'll have ourselves a very likeable, very decent player that will be one of those ones we look back and go, you know what, he was a good signing, him.
Too right, yeah. Fantastic. Okay, there we go, guys. That's it. That's our roundup of Nolito. Hopefully we put any doubts to rest. Let us know, though, what do you think of this signing? Do you want to see more signings? He's not really a Galactico type player. So do you want to see more, you know, people were talking about Aubameyang.
Yeah.
Are they the kind
Kroos.
of signings? Yeah, Kroos.
Thiago.
Who do you think we're going to sign next? How happy are you with Nolito? And are you looking forward to this weekend with Guardiola being officially unveiled?
If you see us, say hello.
We're going to be there, and also we'll be doing loads of stuff on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. Make sure you follow us on all these accounts because we're going to be right there and we're going to look with our own eyes at the big man.
The man.
Guys, thanks very much for watching. This is Blue Moon Rising TV. Make sure you subscribe. Please give us a like if you've enjoyed it, and we'll see you in a bit.